What if the fear you've been fighting isn't even yours? What if the panic that wakes you at 2 a.m., the weight that crushes your chest, the thoughts that loop like a curse, were never born from within you? Because the spirit of fear doesn't ask permission. It disguises itself as you, your voice, your thoughts, your logic. Until one day, you can't tell the difference between being cautious and being in chains. You keep praying for peace, but no one told you peace doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender. And now, deep down, you're wondering, if the Bible has so much to say about peace, why does your heart still feel like a war zone? Let me say this with no apology. This isn't just another message. It's heaven interrupting your numbness. Because today, we're not just going to read the Bible. We're going to use it as a scalpel to cut through the root of fear itself. Not the pretty verses, not the Instagram quotes, the ones they never taught you. Today, you'll see what no one ever showed you. You don't need more reassurance. You need revelation. Layer 1. Fear doesn't start in the mind. It starts in the spirit. You've tried breathing techniques. You've tried journaling your thoughts, lighting candles, playing soft music. You've even repeated verses like mantras. Do not be afraid. God has not given me a spirit of fear, but still it returns. The pounding in your chest, the spirals in your thoughts, the paralysis when the future feels foggy. That's because fear is not just psychological, it's spiritual. And here's the shock no one told you. You can't fight a spirit with self-help. The Bible never said fear is just an emotion. It names it. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. 2 Timothy 1:7. This isn't poetic language. It's divine diagnosis. Fear is a spirit, and spirits don't leave just because you calm down. They leave when they're cast out. But what do we do instead? We spiritualize the anxiety and normalize the torment. We say, maybe I'm just wired this way. Maybe this is my cross to bear. Maybe it's just my personality. No, you were never designed for torment. You were designed for truth. The peace of God isn't a personality type. It's your birthright. So stop trying to manage fear. Start recognizing it for what it really is, an intruder. And intruders don't belong where covenant lives. Layer 2. You've been trained by chaos, not formed by truth. Somewhere along the line you learned how to survive, not how to trust. You became skilled at anticipating disaster. You mastered the art of overthinking. You call it being prepared, but your spirit calls it bondage. You didn't choose fear, you were discipled by it. Little by little, moment by moment, until anxiety became your default setting. You call it my anxiety, like it's part of your identity. But it's not yours. It's just been with you for so long. You forgot how to live without it. And here's the dangerous lie they never exposed. Just because it feels familiar doesn't mean it's from God. Because God never trains His children through chaos. He forms them through truth. John 8:32 doesn't say, you shall panic and figure it out. It says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And that means freedom starts with unlearning the lies. Like the lie that you have to anticipate every possible outcome, or you'll be caught off guard. Like the lie that if you don't control it, God won't cover it. Like the lie that being numb is safer than being vulnerable. But God didn't call you to survive chaos. He called you to host peace. And peace doesn't mean nothing ever goes wrong. Peace means nothing owns you anymore, not even fear. You're not just anxious. You've been living under spiritual conditioning, and God is calling you out of it. The chaos that shaped you is not qualified to define you. You were formed in the secret place, not in survival mode. Layer 3. Peace isn't a feeling, it's authority. The world told you peace is soft, that it's a mood, a vibe, a fleeting emotional state. But that's not what heaven calls peace. In the kingdom, peace is not a feeling you fall into. It's a realm you stand in. You can't always calm the storm around you, but you can silence the storm within you. Jesus didn't pray for peace to show up. He commanded it. Peace, be still. And the winds obeyed. That same voice, that same authority, lives in you. But here's what most people don't realize. The storm outside wasn't the real threat. It was the fear inside the disciples that Jesus was confronting. They weren't drowning in water. They were drowning in doubt. And so are you. You've been praying for peace to come to you, but God is waiting for peace to come through you. You don't get peace by asking for better circumstances. You get peace when you realize who you carry. The spirit of fear has no power unless it borrows your permission. And today, you revoke it. You don't need a mood shift. You need a mantle. You're not called to feel peaceful. You're called to enforce peace. And the enemy can't stand a believer who finally realizes that fear is not their master, but peace is their weapon. Layer 4. Worry feels responsible, but it's really rebellion. No one ever told you that anxiety can feel holy. It can dress itself up as wisdom. It can sound like discernment. It can even quote Bible verses. You say you're just concerned, just wanting to be prepared, just doing your part. But deep beneath the layers of logic, there's a heart that no longer trusts that God will come through. Worry doesn't feel like rebellion at first, but it is. Because every time you overthink what God already promised, you're placing more faith in your own ability to predict the future than in His ability to hold it. That's why Philippians doesn't say, try not to worry. It says, be anxious for nothing. Nothing. Not finances. Not timelines. Not health reports. Not the next 6 months. This isn't passive encouragement. It's a spiritual order. Because anxiety doesn't just drain your energy, it robs your worship. It consumes the space where trust was meant to live. You think you're being careful, but heaven sees it differently, because there's a thin line between being a good steward and living like an orphan. You don't have to plan your life like God won't provide. You don't have to carry everything like no one's coming to help. Someone already did. And when Jesus said, "Do not worry about tomorrow," He wasn't asking for a suggestion. He was revealing the only posture where peace survives: full surrender. The anxious mind feels noble, but in the kingdom, surrender is smarter than strategy. Layer 5. The enemy speaks in what-ifs, but God speaks in I am. Fear has a language, and if you've lived with it long enough, you've learned to speak it fluently. It sounds like, what if I fail? What if I lose them? What if the worst happens? What if I never get out of this? But God doesn't speak in speculation. He speaks in identity. I am. Not, I might be. Not, I hope to be. Just, I am. Because when you know who He is, you stop obsessing over what might happen. The spirit of fear uses your imagination against you. It drags you into futures God never asked you to visit. It shows you scenes of disaster that haven't happened, and tells you to feel them like they're real. And so, you suffer for battles you were never assigned. But God doesn't give visions of doom. He gives truth that anchors. He says, I am with you. I am your shepherd. I am your refuge. I am your peace. Not, I will be once you fix everything. But I am, right now, in the middle of your unknown. You don't need to forecast every outcome. You just need to return to the presence. Because the more time you spend in what if, the further you drift from I am. And when your imagination is no longer hijacked by fear, you'll finally have room for faith. Faith doesn't ask, what if everything falls apart? It declares, even if it does, He's still God. Layer 6. You don't need closure. You need covering. Fear will convince you that you need to understand everything in order to heal. You tell yourself, if I could just make sense of what happened, if I could just see how this ends, if I could just get closure. But closure is not what your soul is craving. It's covering. because peace doesn't come when the past makes sense. Peace comes when the present is covered by the presence of God. You've been standing at the gravesite of what broke you, waiting for an explanation when heaven is waiting for your surrender. You don't need to go back and replay every detail. You don't need to understand why they left, why the door shut, why the diagnosis came, why the storm hit so hard. Understanding is optional. Covering is essential. Psalm 91 doesn't say, "He who understands God's ways shall abide." It says, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." The shadow doesn't explain. It protects. And you can either keep reaching for answers, or you can run under the wing. That's where the fear breaks. Not when you figure it all out, but when you finally stop needing to. This is your invitation to release the interrogation. God is not a suspect on trial. He's a father offering rest. And you'll never heal if you keep demanding that peace perform for your logic. Peace isn't a puzzle. It's a person. Layer. 7. Freedom isn't a feeling. It's a decision. You've been waiting to feel free. Waiting for the anxiety to vanish, for the pressure to lift, for the nervous thoughts to stop interrupting your worship. But what if freedom isn't what you feel after the battle, but what you choose in the middle of it? Jesus didn't wait to feel good before declaring victory. He bled truth under pressure. He spoke authority in agony. And so can you. Because real deliverance isn't when your body stops shaking. It's when your spirit stands up and says, "I'm not owned by this anymore." The enemy has trained you to think that fear is the signal to freeze. But in the kingdom, fear is the sign to step forward. You don't need to wait until your voice stops trembling. You speak anyway. You walk anyway. You trust anyway. Freedom isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to bow to it. When Paul and Silas were in chains, they didn't wait to feel free. They worshipped until the chains fell off. That's what freedom does. It doesn't negotiate with torment. It lifts its hands in defiance. It sings when silence feels safer. It moves when fear says, "Sit down." This is the moment where you stop waiting to be rescued and start living like someone who's already been redeemed. Fear won't walk itself out the door. You have to evict it, and the key is already in your hand. You were never weak. You were just weary from carrying battles that weren't yours. You were never broken beyond repair. You were simply walking through a war that no one else could see. And now you know the truth. Fear isn't your identity. Worry isn't your inheritance. Anxiety isn't your destiny. You were born to host peace, to enforce heaven's stillness, to carry the sound mind that was bought for you. So today, don't just nod along. Don't just save this video for later. Draw a line. Declare a shift. Say it out loud. I do not partner with fear. I receive my peace. No more rehearsing worst-case scenarios. No more overthinking the obedience God already called you into. No more building altars to anxiety and calling it wisdom. You've been covered. You've been equipped. You've been called out. So if this word wrecked your spirit and whispered life back into your soul, comment below. God, I receive my peace. And if you're ready to keep hearing what heaven is whispering, subscribe. Not for more content, but for more clarity, more truth, more authority. Because fear had its turn. Now it's your voice that shakes the atmosphere.